5 Live Formula One.
Hello and welcome back to a very warm and sunny paddock here in Monza. We are getting ready for the second practice session ahead of the Italian Grand Prix this weekend, and it's extremely busy in the paddock. I've just been watching former F1 driver and the 2023 24 Hours of Le Mans winner Antonio Giovinazzi stopping to take pictures with local fans. Of course, the Tifosi are out in force supporting Ferrari, and of course Antonio won the 24 Hours of Le Mans in a Ferrari. But it's not quite the same when it comes to Formula One. Ferrari lacking a little bit in 2023 on the Formula One grid, but here on home soil at the Temple of Speed that is the Autodromo Nazionale Monza, they are hoping for a little bit more this weekend. Charles Leclerc, talking as we came into this race weekend, said he wasn't sure if they were going to be competitive enough for a podium, but a bit more competitive than last weekend. Of course, we only raced just under a week ago in Holland, the Netherlands, on home soil for Max Verstappen, and he is the one to beat. Fastest in FP1 earlier on, and he's looking to take that 10th consecutive win. And he has a mighty lead in the standings, 138 points separating him from his nearest rival and teammate Sergio Perez. So FP1 was, as we might have expected, Max Verstappen on top, but perhaps not as ominous as we feared, and it was Ferrari P2 with Carlos Sainz in the second place ahead of Sergio Perez. So as we head into FP2, plenty more question marks and some answers hopefully that we're going to get in the next 60 minutes. And joining me, Rosanna Tennant, down here in the paddock is Harry Benjamin and Jolyon Palmer. They're up in the commentary box. Good afternoon to you guys. What did you take away from FP1 then, Harry?
Well, I think what we took away from that at the end was how much running there was on track. I think there was a little bit of a worry because we've got the alternate tyre allocation in force this weekend, which they're Pirelli reducing the amount of tyres being brought down from 13 sets to 11 per team, and having mandatory tyre sets for qualifying on Saturday. I think we were a bit worried that everyone would just try and keep their tyres in reserve, but that wasn't so much the case, really. I think Verstappen did around 30 laps in the end, and they never seemed to be a sort of dull point on track where there weren't many cars, so that was pretty good. And only half a tenth between Verstappen and Sainz. The fight is on for the win.
Like it, you're ramping up as we head into this Italian Grand Prix weekend. And this circuit is so different, Jolyon, to what we were racing on just a few days ago in Zandvoort. Long straights. We've got the teams bringing circuit-specific changes to their cars this weekend. How did you approach this track when you went racing here?
Well, firstly, from a setup point of view, it's all about low downforce, top speed, and that is the difference to Zandvoort. They're both old school circuits. They're two of the oldest tracks we have in Formula One. But Zandvoort, you need the speed through the fast corners. Here, you need the speed on the straight in Monza. So it's all about straight line speed and then big braking and kind of chicanes as well. The low speed couple of chicanes are quite important. And then just carrying whatever you can with low downforce through some of the medium and faster corners as well. It's a pretty simple track in truth. There are 6 corners effectively, including some of the chicanes there. But it's about hitting the brakes well, cleanly getting your exits, because they're so important, launching you back onto to another of those straights.
And we saw Max Verstappen having a little bit of a lock-up at the end of FP1. The man is human after all. Complained a little bit of helmet lift during FP1, but I'm sure the team have sorted that out. I spoke to his race engineer, Jean-Pierre Lambiese. He's talking about the little bits on the car that can sort of help with that buffeting. But this track, Max Verstappen, it does look like it's his for the taking. A 10th consecutive win, and there's been talk over lunch break about this dominance that we're seeing with Max and Red Bull. He's taken 11 out of the 13 race victories so far. Christian Horner, guys, was pretty scathing about Toto Wolff, saying that Toto obviously has a total lack of understanding if he thinks the car has been tailored just to Max Verstappen. What do you make of that? Do you think the cars are equal when it comes to Max and Checo?
I think the cars are equal, I do believe. But just one driver can drive it much quicker than the other. And they do have a difference in driving style. Verstappen can take the car being a lot more on the nose, so is a bit more pointier, it's oversteering more effectively. And he can drive around that, and he has done for years. So maybe the theory is that the car's going more in that direction in terms of evolution, and that inherently favours Max. But Checo has the chance to try and drive around that as well. I don't think he's got an inferior car, but just maybe his driving style is less prone to getting the most out of it in that direction. But what do you do if you're Red Bull? You have to go in the direction that's the quickest way, and Verstappen is showing that it is the quickest way. So I don't really think there's any alternative for Red Bull than follow that.
I think Sergio himself has also said, with I think they started on a very much an even keel at the start of the year, but then the upgrades that are being brought in, Sergio said himself he struggled to get to grips with them as quickly as Max has, and that's something he needs to work on.
I think this whole conversation has stemmed from actually a misquote that a journalist put to Max Verstappen that he claimed Toto Wolff had said. And in fact, Toto had said that was Max sort of creating a car around himself that's just very tricky to control, but fast if you can control it. And that has been misquoted about the fact that the car was actually created for Max. It's more what Max could do with the car. But nonetheless, it's given us plenty to talk about as we head into FP2. Green light, cars out on track. It's up to you guys in commentary. Let's go for FP2.
Thank you very much, Rosanna. The Tifosi on their feet and celebrating as the two Ferraris peel out of the pit lane. And for those who wish to do a sync-up at the start of FP2, it's 58 minutes, 32, 31 and 30 seconds remain of this session as Charles Leclerc rounds Curva Grande in a slightly tweaked livery for that Ferrari, adding the yellow stripes across the nose cone and the engine cover, a new helmet and overalls as well for both drivers to celebrate the Ferrari team's 24-hour Le Mans win this year. So Ferrari successful in sports cars, and they'll be trying to emulate that this weekend, but I'm not sure the win is quite on the cards. But Jolyon, their FP1 pace at least seemed encouraging. I know it's FP1 though.
Well, yeah, it was very close to the Red Bull, but it was only FP1. So we will see a little bit more in this session, I think, what the true pecking order is from today. At the moment, 17 cars out on circuit. Alonso having a very chilled time in the back of the garage and helmet off still. Not looking like he's going to join the action just yet. And then Albon and Russell also not out on circuit. 17 other cars are weaving their way down towards the Parabolica to start a flying lap. And once again, big mix of tyres used. Hards and mediums predominantly, with Logan Sargent on a soft. And I guess with the tyre allocation for this weekend, we still won't have as obvious a picture where we're going to be for qualifying, because you might have some lower teams not prioritising the soft tyre. Sargent starting on a soft now, he'll probably switch to something else, so it still might not be the clearest of pictures, but amongst those looking for pole, I'm sure we will see a soft tyre run, and then more long running, which we saw a little bit of earlier on.
And trouble early doors though for Lance Stroll and the Aston Martin.
Big problem, completely lost power.
So he's parked on the exit of Ascari down the back straight, and that has brought out a red flag. So everybody has to come back into the pit. So Stroll then stranded on the grass. He's pulled off to the side, reporting power issues, and not a great start then, because Stroll wasn't in the car for free practice one. That was the reserve driver Felipe Drugovich, the F2 champion from last year, getting his FP1 run out, and we can ride on board and hear the sounds of Lance Stroll now as he goes up through the gears, down the straight that approaches the left-hander of Ascari. And actually, even before he comes into the corner, it just seems to cut out on him.
Yeah, he's just lost power, which is a disaster for Stroll, who didn't drive the car this morning either. Drugovich was in, Stroll getting his first taste of the action, and 7 corners in, is out of power and grinding to a halt. There goes the engine for good. And, well, that is a tough day, isn't it, for Lance? No complete lap on the board at all. The car's stranded on the outside of the circuit. The red flag is out. We're going to have a little bit more of a delay to get this one going. No one has put in a flying lap aside from the 2 Alfa Romeos, and neither of them are particularly quick. So we're in a lull again, Harry.
Well, a lull means we can pick up on some of our FP1 chat, I think, because we were chatting on hashtag BBC F1 a couple of things, really. Driver moves in F1 that have got you excited over the years, off the back of Lewis Hamilton re-signing with Mercedes until the end of 2025. The driver market over the next couple of seasons, at least, seems a little bit stale. But then that quickly expanded into a driver who perhaps didn't perform well, or was there a driver who didn't perform well in their first season or show those glimpses of pace, but then went on to be great? But I think the bottom line out of that one, we kind of struggled. Jenson Button was up there, his Stroll.
We're standing by there, just checking if we can get the car fired up. We'll try and get you back, so stand by. If we need to turn it off for temps, I'll let you know, but standing by.
I think the car is off. It sounded like it was off, but Stroll's still sitting in the car, and the team thinking they might be able to reset something from the cockpit and get him back under his own steam, but no sign of that as yet.
Well, they'll be desperate to try something so he can get at least some running. Of course, in practice, under a red flag, the clock still counts down. So unlike in qualifying where we stop the clock, practice, it still counts down. A driver who didn't perform well in their first season but went on to be great, Stroll.
And Lance, tell them to stay away. We're still going to try and fire this up.
Stroll, great.
No, no, they are going to try and fire that up. The marshals are actually just talking to Stroll in the cockpit. I think they're trying to actually get him out of the car.
So this is an awkward one now. The marshals are surrounding Lance Stroll in the car. They're now pushing the car with Stroll still sitting in the Aston Martin. Now, he doesn't want to start disobeying the marshals because you get into trouble for this. They need to clear the car. Let's listen to him.
Okay, Lance. We believe we need to turn the car off and jump out, I'm afraid. So turn it off. P0. Must be P0. Jump out. I'm sorry.
And now they are pushing him back. Stroll still sitting in the cockpit. It's a tough time for him and Aston Martin then. Fernando Alonso wasn't out on circuit. The car that was has broken down.
Yeah, not a great start into the weekend, off the back of a tough weekend as well for Lance Stroll and Zandvoort, not feeling very well coming into the weekend, and outpaced by his teammate Alonso, getting onto the podium in the race, and Stroll outside of the points in that occasion. Fernando Alonso, a driver who didn't perform well in his first season but went on to be great.
Yeah, but he was in a Minardi, wasn't he? I thought he was pretty good for being in a Minardi.
Well, I think his teammate was there or thereabouts with him, if not ahead, from recollection. I think Alonso got like a 10th place, which, yes, in a poor Minardi is good. But his teammates at the time were a mixture of Tarso Marquez and Alex Yoon. But Marquez was able to get a couple of ninth places. Alonso only the 10th place.
So there's the famous story of one of the photographers in the paddock who was in. This is in what, 2000?
Yeah.
And they want to shoot with Minardi, and they got a chance to have 2001. They got a chance to have a hot lap with either Tarso Marquez or Fernando Alonso, and they were like, "Well, who's Fernando Alonso?" So they went for a hot lap with Tarso Marquez, out of Formula One at the end of the year, and Fernando Alonso. Fast forward 22 years, still here, double world champion, fans' favourite. But memories of that flying lap with Tarso Marquez will live on.
I wonder what Tarso Marquez is doing now. Rosanna, any ideas?
Practicing his hot lap skills, probably, I'd imagine. We're just outside the Aston Martin garage. Of course, the side for Lance Stroll is empty at the moment, which is so disappointing. As Jolyon was saying, we had Felipe Drugovich in the car in FP1, Lance sitting out, as he has to do during the season at some point. And of course, we had those upgrades, didn't we, for Aston Martin last time out for the Dutch Grand Prix. They'll have been wanting to get a grip and to feel them again. And so time spent on the grass, on the sidelines, is not how Lance would have liked his first foray around this circuit to have gone this weekend.
All right, thank you, Rosanna. Session will resume at 17:10 local time. So in under, less than a minute, really. So cars already coming to the end of the pit lane. Carlos Sainz in front of the Mercedes of George Russell, and the rest of them all peel out and will eagerly await the end. Now, based off of pure stats in terms of finishing results for Fernando Alonso, that's what I'm going by. In terms of our actual pace, he was quicker than Tazo Marquez.
Yeah, you gotta scratch more than the surface, I'm afraid, Harry.
Well, hashtag BBC F1 if you can do better, because that's my last ditch attempt at trying to find a way to prove Palmer wrong, which isn't going very well at the moment. Okay, well, red flag conditions about to finish here after an early stoppage for Lance Stroll on his out lap. First chance for Lance Stroll back in the Aston Martin after Felipe Drugovich was in the car for FP1, and it is green light back in the at the end of the pit lane. Stroll unable to continue participating, so that is one Aston Martin out of the session already, and it's 49 minutes and 45, 44, 43 seconds remaining as the smiles return to the grandstands, who are absolutely covered in Ferrari merchandise. It is a bit of a sea of red this time around. It's a sea of orange last weekend in Zandvoort for the Dutch and for Max Verstappen, and this time it is very much the Tifosi here for Ferrari, and based on FP1 I think they'll be fairly happy with that, but still room to go in FP2.
So no team has ever gone a full season winning every race. A famous stat. No one's ever done it. Red Bull, of course, on their way now. And how many races have we got to go? 8 more? At the end of this? 9 more after this one. 9 more now. 1988, McLaren dominated the whole season. Senna and Prost, an iconic team, iconic duo, but Monza was the race that got away and Ferrari pipped them. Is this going to be a bit of a banana skin again for Red Bull? Very different era, reliability now through the roof, but it was the Italian Grand Prix that did for McLaren in 1988, and a hugely popular win for Ferrari and Gerhard Berger.
Just off the top of your head, Joe Luke, that is impressive stuff. Impressive. 3-time Monza winners are Red Bull.
Ferrari won 2, no less, in 88.
Oh.
Imagine the scenes.
It would be something special, wouldn't it? I mean, Charles Leclerc even on the podium, or Carlos Sainz would send the fans into another realm, I think. This is the sound of Carlos Sainz heading down into turn 1. We've got confirmation from Rosanna telling us that it is a fuel system issue for Lance Stroll. So that has put him out of this session in that Aston Martin.
That does not sound like the work of a moment to fix either, because they will get that car back in due course. It was getting pushed, I think, to actually quite a convenient point in the back of the paddock, but outside of Ascari, that backs onto the paddock. They can get that on the flatbed and get it back to the garage, and there's still 47 minutes left on the clock, but it doesn't sound like it's going to be a quick electronic fix. And so Aston Martin obviously were checking on the pit wall to see if there was something they could sort out, and it's more mechanical than they had hoped. So we will see if Stroll gets back out. Alonso's still sitting in the pit lane, even though we've gone green again and there's laps coming in. So they're not getting anything right now, Aston Martin.
Well, I wonder if they're sort of double-checking Alonso's car to check it's not an issue that can crop up on both Aston Martins. Well, it was this time earlier in FP1 where we had no Williamses or no Alfa Romeos out on the track. Alfa Romeo suffering hugely, but then with sort of an issue with the rear, but then getting that fixed, and both drivers then able to enjoy some laps towards the end of FP1, and both are straight out again. And an Alfa Romeo that has a new livery as well this weekend, with lots of gold and green highlights added, and the Italian flag adorned on the engine cover to celebrate Alfa Romeo's home race.
Fastest lap of the weekend so far, pumped in by Max Verstappen, 1 minute 22.2. He did a 22.6 earlier on in the first session on the hard tyre. Now he's on a medium, as is Sainz, 4 tenths behind him. George Russell 7 tenths behind him. That's your top 3 with these opening laps of the session. Albon slots in on the soft tyre, pretty much matches Verstappen. Opening gambits coming in, and there's plenty more to come, I think, from this.
To pick up on what Rosanna was talking to us about at the start of the programme, sort of Christian Horner rubbishing Toto Wolff's kind of claim that the Red Bull car is very much planned around Max Verstappen. Even if that is the case, and Perez is able to keep there or thereabouts, I mean, what for you, Jolien, what does Perez, and it's the same question we've been asking since Perez's lack of form since Monaco, really. now that the Daniel Ricciardo threat seems to have abated for at least a few races, does Perez really need to worry anymore? Because I'm under the impression that you put anybody in that car right now, looking at the current crop in the Red Bull kind of driver field at the moment, and they're not going to do masses better.
I agree. In the Red Bull field, I mean, who do you put in? Tsunoda? No. Lawson? No. Then it's just Ricciardo, isn't it, who has got a broken metacarpal and they wanted to test out, but he cannot drive at the moment. So Perez is I think with Ricciardo picking up that injury, I think that really does safeguard Perez's seat. There was, he's contracted anyway for next year. Whoa, very, very close to an accident with Piastri into the back of a Mercedes. Piastri slows down in the McLaren through the second chicane and will gesticulate a little bit at said Mercedes. I didn't see which one it was, but as we jumped on board there, I thought that was going to be a rear end. Got away with it. I think it was Hamilton in the Mercedes, and I'm sure we'll hear a little bit of radio about that one.
Yeah, so it's the McLaren coming into the De La Roja chicane, into the braking zone of the left-hander, and it is the Mercedes that's going so slowly on the inside, and then McLaren has to bail out of it.
Yeah, nice from Hamilton.
Well, that's a kinder radio message than he could have given. That's actually, I think that was pretty poor from Lewis, really, sitting there on the apex. And you don't have the excuse in Monza not to be able to see either.
Yeah, just check my car track at one piece for next run, so worse.
This circuit, it really should be quite straightforward to get out of the way of each other, and Hamilton was just sitting there on the racing line. He had a car in front of him as well, but between him and his race engineer, they've got to be jumping out of the way for others. And we have a lot of slow-moving vehicles now coming out of Ascari, heading towards the Parabolica. I think we're starting to see teams looking for, or drivers looking for a little bit of a slipstream now, and this could be our first glimpse as to what it might be like in qualifying tomorrow. No one wants to be that first car punching a hole in the air for everyone else.
Well, we caught a little bit of the Formula 2 qualifying just before this FP2 session, and that was looking rather messy coming into the final corner as they all tried to find a bit of space on track and crucially get that toe.
That's chaotic, isn't it? That Formula 2 qualifying was ridiculous. It was shades of, was it 2019 Monza qualifying, where no one got a final lap in apart from, I think, Carlos Sainz. And yeah, it was not F1's finest hour. F2 did a similar thing earlier on, and that's going to be something spoken about in the drivers' meeting, I am sure, later on, to try and make sure that doesn't happen again. Albon's just done the fastest middle sector of anyone, out there on a soft tyre. Verstappen's nudged his best time down on the medium tyre. And back to Red Bull and the way that they designed the car. All teams are designing a car based on the feedback of the driver and wind tunnel numbers and just the pure numbers, but then once you have the car and you're trying to find a direction for it, the setup and where to improve thereafter, you need the feedback of the driver. You have two drivers, you have Verstappen and you have Perez. One is comfortably quicker than the other. You're naturally going to lean towards the feedback of the quicker driver. And it happens, it's not just Red Bull that this happens to. Aston Martin, we jump on board with Fernando Alonso coming into Ascari, just past where his teammate's car is on the right-hand side as we head down towards Parabolica. Now, of course, Aston Martin are going to be leaning on Fernando Alonso to get their truer picture of the direction, because that's their best chance, and they will naturally favour the feedback of their faster driver. And this is happening all the way through. Even at McLaren, Norris maybe has more say. You hope that the drivers are aligned on what they want from the car. That's the best case. But if they're not, and Piastri is asking for something slightly different, you'll naturally lean towards the quicker driver. And it's always been the case in Formula One. It just seems that Verstappen is more accepting of a car that's on the nose than Perez. But I don't know if this... I think part of it's true that Verstappen can have a car that's a little bit more lively and it's the quickest way to go. And I think that's where Toto Wolff's comments were coming from. And he is mighty quick with it. But also, then that's the quickest way to run the car. And so you've got to adapt as the other driver in that team. And no one as yet seems to be able to. And yeah, there's no one in AlphaTauri that can as well. So Perez has got a little bit more time and needs to try and resettle in there to show what he can do, because the pressure's never off when you're in that car. He has to achieve a minimum objective, second in the championship this year.
Well, as the two Ferraris go 1 and 2, Alonso also gets his Aston Martin up into 8th. But, Rosanna, they've only got one car left in it for FP2.
They certainly have, and 8 mechanics from Aston Martin have just been given the go-ahead to go up the pit lane to pit in to retrieve Lance's car. They had a black bag which had the car cover in it. They had a trolley, they had skateboards and leaf blowers ready to get the car and get it back to the garage quickly. And as I'm standing here outside the Aston Martin garage, I can see Lance Stroll now walking down the pit lane, ovals rolled down, holding on to his race helmet and looking up at the screen. I'm sure he'll be hoping that the team can get the car fixed, but as Jolyon said, it's not the work of a moment, so we may not see Lance back out until FP3 tomorrow morning, making his time on track very limited as he heads into qualifying tomorrow, which we know will be an interesting one given we have that alternative tyre set up for tomorrow's quali session. He's just coming back into the garage now, and I'm sure there'll be lots of questions about this fuel system issue.
Yeah, we can see he's just walked past you, Rosanna, and Stroll then coming into his garage, still with the plaster on just under his left ear as well, and wasn't feeling too well coming into the Zandvoort weekend, and didn't really have a great weekend there either, did he, Jolyon? And Aston Martin, this question is going to surely become bigger and bigger and bigger. The more Stroll cannot match Alonso or score points when Alonso is scoring podiums, if they're going to continue their fight for second place, at least in the constructors, or indeed at least in the fight in the top midfield parts, they need two drivers that are capable of doing it, and they've clearly got the car that can score points. But when Alonso's finishing on the podium and Stroll is finishing in 11th, that can't continue for that much longer. Unless your dad's the boss.
Well, exactly, and that's always the caveat, isn't it?
But surely the other members on the board at Aston Martin, at some point, they're going to go, right, come on.
It depends on what their goals are at Aston Martin. Stroll has scored 7 points in the last 6 races. The team are third in the Constructors' Championship. That's not enough points to warrant being there. If they had 2 Lance Strolls in the car this year, then they'd have less than 100 points on the board. They'd be nibbling away at McLaren and wouldn't be too far ahead of Alpine if they had 2 Lance Strolls. If they had 2 Fernando Alonsos in the car, they'd be ahead of Mercedes in the Constructors' Championship. There's such a big gulf between the two. And it all comes down to Lawrence Stroll, doesn't it, really? And Lance, I guess. There was a rumour before Zandvoort that somehow circulated that Lance Stroll was going to leave Formula 1 at the end of this year and go and play professional tennis, which came out of absolutely nowhere and has been laughed off by Lance. But for him to go, it does feel like it needs something seismic like that, because he's had flashes of pace, and Lance isn't a terrible driver. He's had a pole position, he's had podiums, but for year after year he's been outperformed quite comfortably by a teammate, but he's got no threat of job security, and it is holding Aston Martin back in the Constructors, and this year is absolutely showing it.
Andrew Benson's made a good point. The team exists because of Lance. Everything else is secondary, and that completely backs up what you've said. And as long as they have a star in Fernando Alonso, they're able to showcase a good performance and fight up there. I mean, look at last year. It's an improvement as far as they're concerned. It's tick, tick, tick all round.
Well, it's ironic because signing Alonso has done so much good for Aston Martin, but so much bad for Lance Stroll. He's getting obliterated every weekend. Occasionally, it's a standout performance when he's been there or thereabouts with Alonso, which happened in Barcelona. Fernando went off in qualifying and they were close when he had a bit of damage, and Alonso let him beat him on Sunday there. There's been a couple of moments where Stroll's been close to Alonso and is mildly impressive, but Fernando Alonso's 42 as well. He's been around for a while and he's looking as good as he's ever been, and he's feeling as good as he's ever been. And yeah, when you have that teammate comparison, and it's as stark as it is, it's pretty tough for the other driver. 7 podiums for Alonso so far this year, none for Stroll, and just 1 4th place in the chaotic Melbourne. Apart from that, he's got a best result of 6th. 7 podiums for Alonso, including a couple of seconds, and almost could have had a win in Monaco. But his job is safe at the moment. So until he wants to stop, or Lawrence Stroll says, actually, we're going to go for the best possible Constructors' Championship position for Aston Martin. We're going to take on Red Bull. As soon as they have aspirations to achieve the maximum as a team, they can't have Lance Stroll at the wheel because he's not good enough at that level.
Well, Alonso is currently up in third now, half a second off Sainz and Leclerc, which is Ferrari 1-2 to the Tifosi's roar in P2. Alonso comes into the pits. Lance Stroll brought out the red flag early doors due to an issue, losing all power, and is out of the session for now, Rosanna.
Certainly is. Fernando Alonso's just come in right in front of me. He's being jacked up and wheeled into his garage. Meanwhile, the mechanics that I told you about earlier on, they ran the other car, the other Aston Martin of Lance Stroll's, down the pit lane, and I cannot tell you, they set to work incredibly quickly. Front wing came off, the side pod covers have come off, the engine covers have come off. They are working so incredibly hard. I've never seen anyone ratchet a spanner like some of those mechanics. And then one of the garage technicians tasked with brushing all the gravel and grass out of the garage.
Straight line.
Yeah, so it looks like we're about 5k down to George, so that's a bit more than Sim.
610's coming from the first sector. It's just two straights.
It's mainly straight line, but yeah, there is a little bit of a loss turn 1-2.
Lewis Hamilton sounding incredulous at where he's losing time around this track. But yes, lots of work going on Lance Stroll's car, and he brought a lot of grass and stones back with him, obviously taking to the runoff area. So plenty of work for the Aston Martin crew to do to get him ready. I don't know if it'll be for the rest of this session, but definitely for tomorrow's FP3 session.
Yeah, they've got to try and work on getting something out there for Stroll, who, as we said, needs some level of running to get some performance for the team this weekend. Hamilton, it sounds like, is running a slightly different setup to George Russell, and that's what he's chatting about with Pete Bonington, his engineer there over the radio, saying, how am I losing 6/10 in the first sector? He's right, it's basically two straights, long run into the first chicane, tight chicane.
I'd rather box and get this change and we'll just way out of bed.
Yeah, I think that would wipe out most of our programme. That's the problem, Lewis.
And he's not happy about it, so it's just one slow chicane, straight into it, straight after it, and he's losing 6/10. And he was told there's 5 kph difference in the speed, which is a bit more than they had estimated from their pre-event simulation. So that's obviously something that Mercedes have planned to do, put Russell on a slightly more trimmed out version, Hamilton on a slightly higher downforce level of their low downforce options, and Lewis just cannot drive enough to make up for that 5 kph deficit. On top of it, sounds like he's actually losing a little bit through that corner as well, which is not ideal. Normally you'd be trying to win something through the corners and losing on the straights, but he's not a happy driver right now. Overall, he's 3/10 down on Russell. They're both on the medium tyres, so it shows he is gaining something around the rest of that, but he just cannot make up for the huge straight line speed deficit. And it sounds like in the latest bit of chitter chatter, it would take too long to change. So he's locked into this for FP2.
Yeah, well, we're nearly halfway through this session. Sainz currently fastest with a 1:21.5 on the medium compound tyre, ahead of Leclerc. Alonso, Perez, Verstappen, the top 5. Albon, Russell, Sargent, Hamilton, Norris, the top 10. Tsunoda, Lawson, Piastri, Gasly, Ocon, the top 15. Magnussen, Bottas, Zhou, and Hülkenberg, the 19 drivers who have set a time with Lance Stroll, not out, or causing a red flag on his outlap, with issues with his Aston Martin that they are rapidly trying to fix back in the garage. As we hear the sounds of Lewis Hamilton approaching the Ascari chicane, have you felt, Jolyon, that George Russell has been, apart from a great qualifying in Zandvoort, third, but this sort of middle of the season, it feels like he's been a little bit anonymous, or he's certainly struggled compared to Lewis, whereas before, last year it was the other way around, wasn't it, with a car that really didn't suit Hamilton at all, and Russell was able to get more out of it and get the better results.
Well, Hamilton started last year doing a lot more experimental work on the car, and Russell was looking quite good. Then at Montreal, Canadian Grand Prix last year, Hamilton stopped trying to mess around and just try to get the most out of what he had. And he started to be a little bit better than Russell overall. The second 2/3 of the season, Hamilton was stronger than Russell, but George had stumped his authority on that Mercedes seat by coming in and doing such a great job early on, and had that run of top 5 finishes and some podiums in there. This year, I think Russell's been just struggling a little bit more. You're right. The middle part of the season, or the later part of that first half of the season that we've had, George was on a really, really tough run, Russell, in the other Mercedes. And actually, there's been a point where I feel like he could be almost not thankful, but it's not a bad thing that the Mercedes car isn't the world beater that it was before he joined it, because then he might be looking a bit more like Bottas in that seat, where he's just not able to match Hamilton in qualifying or the race. Lewis has had that level of dominance in this season in the head-to-head, but he did a good job in Zandvoort, and he knew that he needed to do that as well. He's qualified third. Hamilton struggled a little bit, didn't make Q3, and he's just got to kick on from that. And he's obviously started this weekend as well, 3/10 up on Hamilton, maybe on the slightly better setup for the moment. They've been pretty evenly matched overall, but it did just feel in the first half of the season that Hamilton was stretching his legs in that teammate rivalry.
Yeah, he's actually said a change in setup for Russell has helped him out of this midfield slump that he's had to endure over the last few races, really, I suppose, since that retirement in Canada, really. Of course, knocked out in Q1 in Hungary as well. So third on the grid for Zandvoort was a good return. Now looking for the next good race result from George Russell, on podium to his name so far. As we just saw a few moments ago, Liam Lawson, who is back in the AlphaTauri in place of Daniel Ricciardo, who, as you mentioned earlier, Jolene, after breaking a bone in the metacarpal in his left hand, is out, not sure how long for yet. Rumours of maybe, well, Singapore might be tough, but Japan looking likely. But Lawson back in, the New Zealander, the F2 racer from a couple of years ago, podium sitter and an F2 winner, currently second in the Japanese Super Formula Championship that he's been racing this year. And he's currently only a 10th behind Yuki Tsunoda. And
he's currently on an outlap on a soft tyre. So we're going to get to the nub of it in FP2. Now, soft tyres on for Leclerc and Sainz in 1 and 2. The two Ferraris, soft tyres on for Perez. Verstappen just leaves the garage. This is our quali simulation time. And Tsunoda and Lawson, as you said, separated by just 1/10. That's a decent effort. 12th and 13th, launching it as well on a set of softs. But first of all, it's Charles Leclerc. Second place in the order at the moment. Sweeps around Verstappen exiting the pits, sweeps around Hulkenberg, and gets nicely through the first sector, accelerating his way as we jump on board with him coming through Curva Grande.
Up through the gears into 8th gear for Leclerc, and then down through the gears into the braking zone. First the left-hander of the De La Roja chicane, and then through the right-hander before you approach the first of the double right-handers. Lesmo 1 and then Lesmo 2. Leclerc speeds round 1 straight into 2. Very easy to run the car out wide. A little bit too wide there, but the gravel is waiting for you. So no danger of track limits there. You'll find yourself in the gravel if you do so. DRS opens the drag reduction system in the short run down to the Ascari chicane. Quick left, then right before you're back onto the back straight, approaching the final corner, the Curve Alboreto, or the Parabolica, however, which one you want to call it.
Here we go then, one more corner. Turns it in so fast, downshifts a couple of gears as he goes, picks up the throttle, squeezes it on from 6th gear, accelerates to the line, and Leclerc, a couple of tenths away from Sainz, improves, but he's still a 10th down on Sainz, who's done the fastest first sector in his Ferrari on this first lap on soft tyres. Albon shoots up to 3rd place, and that's on a medium tyre. So Williams going the reverse way on strategy at the moment on tyres. Perez out there improving, but still Sainz's benchmark on the medium is the one to beat, and I think he's backed off in the middle sector. Yeah, Sainz has lost a heap of time in the middle.
Yep, still his fastest time, a 1:21.5 for Carlos Sainz ahead of Charles Leclerc and Albon on that medium compounder tyre in 3rd. Let's just see what Perez has got as he comes across the line. Purple in the middle sector, fastest of anybody on that softball tyre, and he goes fastest by 25 hundredths of a second. Perez a 1:21.5.
And he will slipstream his teammate into a flying lap as well now. That was nicely orchestrated by Red Bull. I don't know if that was on purpose or by chance. I feel like it was on purpose, given the chat that we heard from Perez earlier on, and the look that the drivers are doing to find their toes. So Verstappen towed Perez into the final corner. Perez then towed Verstappen into the first corner, as we saw a replay of Sainz.
Had a rear lock into copy.
And that's what happened. He had a rear lock into turn 4, a little snap of oversteer, and he skipped through the chicane. So Sainz fastest first sector, which still stands, but had to back out of it. So we'll see if he goes for another lap on the softs. Verstappen's got huge traffic coming through Lesmo too.
Yikes, that is traffic paradise, as Yuki Tsunoda might call it, as Verstappen then comes powering down the straight towards Ascari. Would have lost maybe a little bit of time, but no one got dramatically in his way, but pretty much the rest of the field was meandering down that straight. He powers through Ascari and on the run down to the Parabolica. Personal best sector 1, personal best sector 2. Time to be at the moment a 1:21.540 of his teammate Sergio Perez, and to the line for Max Verstappen, and it's third fastest, but fastest overall in that final sector. So just shy of a 10th to his teammate Sergio Perez.
The middle sector was shocking with the traffic.
And Verstappen just backing up then what we saw on the pictures, the traffic absolutely shocking Rosanna.
Yeah, lots of work going on in the Mercedes garages of both Lewis Hamilton and George Russell. We heard Lewis on the radio, didn't we, to his race engineer Bono, complaining about the lack of straight line speed. He wanted to change his rear wing configuration, but was told it would take too long. So instead they've done a few front wing adjusts. It's been taking a little bit of time. His teammate George Russell, however, is now leaving the pits, but a lot of work going on the front of his car too. The front wing came off, it's gone back on. Plenty of work around the front suspension. So both drivers obviously not very happy with the way they've set the car up coming into FP2, but we know the drivers like to make a few changes between sessions. Lewis Hamilton especially one of those, and apparently they tried a different wing ratio and the straight line delta has been a bit affected. That's what the team is saying.
Such engineer speak. Different wing ratio and the straight line delta. They're on different downforce levels, and Russell was about 5 kph quicker. That's the summary of it. Always makes it sound a bit more confusing.
The Palmer explanation the translation, I should say.
Norris is quick. Fastest middle sector for Norris. We've not seen much of McLaren so far. Verstappen, I reckon there's another 10th plus in his lap, but he did have a lot of traffic. Lesmo 2 was the place for it. On the entry, there was one car that was a little bit wavering in the middle. Didn't cost him a huge amount, and everyone else did well to get out of his way. But here goes Lando Norris, and he goes to the top of the times now. 0.166 clear of Perez.
Yep, then Sainz, Verstappen, Leclerc. Albon was on a good lap as well, improved his lap time, stays 6th on that medium tyre. Here's Verstappen.
We're not going to try again, because I had a read.
It's not qualifying, Max. Box, please.
Yeah, I know, but I want to have a proper read.
So Verstappen stays out, and he's obviously told to pit, and now he does pit. So he wanted a read. He's not talking about a novel there. He wants a look in at the balance, and he's saying actually that lap it was a bit all over the place. I don't really know exactly where we're at in terms of the balance and the feel for the car on low fuel and soft tyres. Now he's in the pits, 22 minutes to go, and they'll fill up the car and do the standard FP2 long runs now. So that's what he's got to work with, and the reason he wants that read is because it's your best chance on a Friday evening to change the car. If you want to make a setup change, you've got a lot of time to go through it, look through the data, and Verstappen saying, actually, I want to know a little bit more. I want to find out some more information before we just lock that off for the day. And GP race engineer saying, no, we're fine with what we got.
Even the best can always learn more and find improvements.
Ferrari find improvements. Carlos Sainz is on the top of the times.
1:21.355 for Carlos Sainz, and then as he came into turn 1, ran deep and had to gently rejoin through the chicane. That's how much pace he was carrying, but there is absolutely nothing between him and Lando Norris in the McLaren. Then Perez, Piastri got up to 4th.
What the mess these guys are creating. Come on. We need to be better than this.
And that's Sergio Perez echoing the traffic issues his teammate was happening, but this time it was coming down the back straight into the Parabolica, and that it can be dangerous as Russell is now on a good lap.
So let's see what the Mercedes can do. Through Lesmo 1, it's not a great first sector for George Russell. He's actually a good few tenths away from the benchmark that we've got already. Sainz the fastest man so far then in the session. 1 minute 21.3. Russell swooping down the hill, down towards Ascari. And he's 0.6 down on Sainz after 2 sectors. Lumps the curb on the left-hand side, keeps his foot pinned through the right and arcing through the left of Ascari. Now he's accelerating to the Curva di Alboreto. Personal best in the first and second sector, so it's okay, but the pace just isn't coming. Down a couple of gears, squeeze on the throttle. I don't think you can go over track limits on the exit of that now, which is nice to see. Here goes Russell to the line, 0.8 down, 9th place.
Behind Alonso and Albon on the medium type. That's a great lap from Albon, isn't it? We don't know the fuel runs, the fuel loads, but again, Albon and the Williams showing some good pace.
Yeah, they seem to be fairly par for the course. Last couple of years, when you see Williams doing something like this, running 7th on a medium tyre, you'd be thinking, oh, they're running light, they're showboating. They actually seem to have good pace. We saw that last time out in Zandvoort. Albon was 3rd quickest in the dry FP2, qualified 4th. It was a genuine picture of their pace, and right now he's 7th and on the inferior tyre, so that will launch him closer to the top 6. There is a 1/4 of a second gap which he's got to bridge to get to Leclerc in 6th place. I like Monza because the times are always pretty close. It's a 1 minute 21 lap, but when the track is a little bit simpler, 6 corners, and things like the slipstream make a big difference, you do get some interesting results. And at the moment we've got Ferrari, McLaren and Red Bull locking out the top 6 places, and there's not a lot to choose between any of them.
Yeah, top 10 covered by less than a second, just shy of that. Sainz is fastest, Norris, Perez, Piastri, Verstappen, the top 5. Leclerc, Albon, Alonso, Russell, Hülkenberg rounding out that top 10. Magnussen, Tsunoda, Ocon, Bottas and Sargent. Bottas and Sargent on their outlaps now in 14th and 15th. Then comes Hamilton, Gasly, Lawson and Zhou, the 19 drivers who were able to set a lap time with Lance Stroll. Issues early doors for his Aston Martin and not able to continue carrying on in this session, although Aston Martin are working hard to try and find a fix if they can, but looking very, very, very unlikely. Bottas then in the Alfa Romeo starts a fast lap as he slams on the brakes and into turn 1 and 2 into the re-liveried Alfa Romeo for this weekend, with the green and gold highlights matching up with the Italian flag that is plastered onto the main body of that Alfa Romeo to celebrate their home race, and a new car, I believe, that Alfa Romeo have launched as well. But Bottas then, personal best through Sector 1. Who else is on a decent lap? Gasly is on a lap. It's not showing too much at the moment. And everybody else, I think that might be it for the quali laps now, as Perez is back out there on the medium compounded tyre.
Hamilton's still on a medium tyre, the medium tyre that he ran at the start of the session. So whilst Russell did the soft tyre quali sim for Mercedes, down in 9th place, 0.8 away, Hamilton has not joined his teammate in chucking on the soft. Gasly comes through and goes 12th. Fernando Alonso, by the way, is only 8th in the Aston Martin, so that car that looked quite improved in Zandvoort is 7/10 off the pace, and there is a little bit of a gap, 6th to 7th. Ferrari, Red Bull and McLaren locking out those top spots, and then there is that 2 to 3/10 gap to your Albon, Alonso, Russell pack. Bottas comes through and goes 12th, so 1.2 seconds down. He's another golf back from being best of the rest of the best.
But encouraging compared to the start of FP1 for Alfa Romeo at least. Zhou is on an outlap at the moment, and he's on the soft compounded tyre, so we'll see what he can do his next time around, as Perez is out there as well in the Red Bull on that medium compound of tyre. There are a couple of seats that look a bit wobbly for next season that might be up for grabs. Zhou Guanyu's Alfa Romeo seats, Logan Sargent's Williams, the AlphaTauris, probably that second seat really. What's your take on it, Jordan? Who's your pick for those 3 seats?
I think AlphaTauri is fairly locked in. I think Tsunoda has to be retained, and then I think you got to go with Ricciardo. And it's going to be still with that view to what do you do with the second Red Bull seat when Sergio Perez's contract is up at the end of next year. And I think Ricciardo is the Red Bull backup option. And because of that metacarpal brake, I don't think they're going to get a decent enough read. That was always the plan when they brought him back for Hungary. Give him half a season, and then they can see where he's at. And if Daniel Ricciardo is the Ricciardo of McLaren, age 34, then you probably don't bother hanging on to him at AlphaTauri and you give one of your young shots a chance. But I just don't know if we're going to get enough of a read on Daniel. And he did have a decent effort in Hungary, less so in Spa, so the jury's well out. But I think that'll be AlphaTauri, unless Liam Lawson can somehow conjure up some magic. And he didn't do a great job on the soft tyre. Didn't actually improve, I don't think, on the soft tyre. So he's back to half a second away from Tsunoda after their soft tyre run. So 1/10 down on the medium. Tsunoda found a chunk. Lawson didn't. That's part of the learning curve. But he's going to have to get on top of that. Practice doesn't matter. But for qualifying in the race, if he wants to try and get that AlphaTauri seat. Alfa Romeo and Williams. Heard a couple of different things from Alfa Romeo. Firstly, Zhou, it looked like the deal was going to be done for him to stay at Alfa Romeo in the summer break, and it looked like it was going to be fairly a foregone conclusion. One more year alongside Bottas, who is contracted for next year in the other car. But there's now been a bit of a squeeze, I think, going on from Alfa Romeo, and it's just dragging out the deal because they're looking to try and extract some more sponsorship or get some more commercial benefit from China, from having the Chinese driver. And that's what I think is delaying that deal. And it is interesting because on pure merit, does Zhou deserve to be there? The jury's out. He's been okay alongside Valtteri Bottas, but
I feel like we haven't seen enough yet because the car hasn't really been there for him. He's shown flashes.
But what do you want from him, I guess? This is the question. Do you want him to be second fiddle to Bottas? And he has been behind Bottas, but we've been quite impressed that he can be ahead sometimes. But it's always with Zhou, it's always with the caveat of we didn't expect much. So every time he does something good, we're impressed. But that's not really how you should operate in Formula One beyond a rookie season.
No.
By the time you're having a sophomore season, you need to be established on your own right. And it is still Bottas leading the team. The team are not in a good position right now. They're tumbling down. They have Audi coming in 2026. So do they just limp on until 2026 with what they've got? Personally, I think I'd like to see Alfa Romeo mix it up. And there are a couple of decent drivers out there. Théo Pourchaire is affiliated with the team and is leading Formula 2. That's a decent option. There's Felipe Drugovich still, F2 champ last year.
Well, see again, Lewis just didn't move away.
Yeah, I saw that copy.
So that's,
it's okay, I will do something to him. It was Russell.
So Yuki Tsunoda getting his Mercedes is mixed up there and complaining on the traffic as he comes down the back straight towards the Parabolica, and also just seeing some replays of Lewis Hamilton dipping a wheel onto the grass as he came out of the Della Roggia chicane, or not the grass, onto the gravel, and kicking up a load of it onto the racing line.
Fairly commonplace exit of that second chicane, and that will be used not infrequently. That little bit of gravel, you just dip your left-hand tyres on and it will dig out a groove before too long. Hamilton really plunging into it on that last lap, and he's just running around now on a long-run pace on the medium. So Hamilton down in 17th, and I don't know if he's going to get a soft tyre run today. Maybe he just feels that the car's not there for him, and they'll work on it overnight, and it'll save a set of tyres for tomorrow. Might not be a bad plan if they are going to make sizable change to that car.
Yeah, well, they are very much into their long runs now, so we'll get the reads on that in a few moments. But I mean, Rosanna, I'll bring you in on this driver market chat. The Alfa Romeo one is an interesting one actually, because they haven't scored points or any points since Canada, and they have Alfa Romeo, that's coming to an end obviously, and it's going to be Audi from 2026 onwards. So they're in this weird phase of, well, they have to reconfirm their drivers, or at least one driver, but then are these the drivers that Audi are going to want when they come in?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of chatter in the paddock about Carlos Sainz being of interest for Audi. Of course, he's worked with Andreas Seidel, who's moved across already to the Alfa Romeo Sauber outfit in readiness for that Audi takeover. So Carlos Sainz could be someone that they'd be after, and therefore, whilst I agree with Jolyon, why not shake it up for the next sort of year or two with Alfa Romeo and replace Joe with someone else? Maybe they are better with the devil they know for the next 2 seasons, and then when the big shake-up comes, everything changes as well. I'd be really interested to see Carlos Sainz and a new manufacturer team coming to the grid. You know, he's bounced around so many teams in Formula One. It seems funny now, he feels so settled at Ferrari, but of course he's been here, there and everywhere when it comes to F1 teams. And I think 5 points for Valtteri Bottas, 4 points for Zhou Guanyu with a car that's difficult to drive. It's a difficult one to kind of grasp on how both those drivers have been performing. I would say Valtteri Bottas hasn't been anywhere near as good as what we were expecting, given that he came from Mercedes with that pedigree and was here or there challenging Lewis Hamilton. But yeah, Alfa Romeo, a tricky one to kind of get a handle on this season, I think. And we saw them have a few difficulties in FP1 earlier on, and now Valtteri P12 and Joe down in P19. It looks like it might be another difficult weekend for them on home soil, of course, the Alfa Romeo Italian team.
But I think that's why, for me, the fact that Valtteri's been a little bit disappointing, race winner at Mercedes, tenuous championship challenger at Mercedes, not really, but at least there was a Valtteri 2.0 a couple of times knocking around, and yet Joe is quite close to him. That's commendable for Joe.
Oh, Perez into the gravel and into the wall backwards. Gets covered in the dust cloud from riding through the gravel. He's able to keep it moving, and we lose him momentarily as he moves forward in that Red Bull into the smoke. But as it starts to dissipate, Perez then in the gravel, and that is coming out of the final corner, and he has made contact with the wall, with that rear wing, as Christian Horner, Rosanna, watches on, and that's brought out a red flag.
Well, I can tell you the whole pit lane can watch on, Harry, because the dust that crash has caused at that final turn around Parabolica is enormous, and you can see it from the pit lane. And I hate to say it, the Ferrari fans were cheering in the grandstand when they saw Perez collide there. So big moment for Sergio Perez, and unfortunately here we are again talking about Checo binning it.
I cannot work out how he's managed to hit the wall there and not completely destroy the car. So he's lost it actually quite early on in Parabolica. He's carried the speed into the corner, and then just dropped the wheel to the outside, found the gravel, and still managed to do a bit of cornering and decelerating as he's on the gravel. And the car's spinning round. He was squeezing on the gas and dropped the left-hand tyres in, then managed to back out of it and somehow managed to just slide the car, drift it round to the right-hand side so he didn't clatter the barrier earlier on. And he managed to do a lot of cornering as he was still going backwards, and he has just, by a whisker, missed the first deep tyre wall. And if he'd have hit that would have totaled the car completely. He's just missed that. He's got far enough around the corner somehow, still turning sideways and backwards through the gravel. He's managed to get enough rotation to get round that first bit of tyre barrier on the left-hand side as you're coming to the exit now of Parabolica, and he's just brushed the rear wing, which looks a little damaged on the back of the Red Bull, but he tried to drive it through and got beached on the way out. The extent of the damage is minimal for a pretty big loss there from Perez.
Well, Perez then out of the car, standing by a marshal, helmet on, with his hands on his waist, and you can just see as well in the background the old Monza banking from the old Grand Prix track, built in 1954 I think it was, and Perez then prominent figure in the foreground as he looks to see where the marshals can direct him to. But that was the last thing Perez needed, is looks of concern in the Red Bull garage from the other side of the pit wall. GP Max Verstappen's engineer talking to Dr. Helmut Marko, but not what Perez needed. Ever.
No, but it was just amazing that he managed to miss whacking the barrier at such a high speed, and he managed to dissipate the speed, getting round and just brushing the Armco later on.
It was very rally-esque, actually, going through the gravel there.
It was very rally-esque, and largely fortunate for Perez that he's not completely destroyed that Red Bull. And it's actually interesting because he's had an off in FP2 there. The clock is still ticking down. 6 minutes left. We're under red flag conditions. And sadly, to our listeners, there's no long run corner this week. So, large sigh from the audience, I'm sure. The good news is Andrew Benson's not been twiddling his thumbs. He's been crunching the numbers, as you'd all expect. And Sergio Perez is actually the fastest man on the race runs. 4 laps, averaging a 25.4. Verstappen 3 laps, is a tenth slower. And then Sainz on 3 laps, who's the fastest man total today. Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari is half a second down, 6/10 down on Perez. Norris and Hamilton a bit slower as well. So the Red Bull on the long run pace looks, as you'd expect, comfortably clear of the field. But Perez, who's quicker than Verstappen on 1 lap by a tenth, is quicker than Verstappen on the long run as well by a tenth. But he's ended it in the gravel, so he's clearly pushing out there.
He's pushing. There might be hope yet, though, come the race day, as unfortunately Perez's Red Bull gets hoisted away by the truck, and Perez then no longer able to take part in this session. We just left 5 minutes left, a track that he had an amazing run at back in 2012. It was an amazing year for Perez in the Sauber days. Talk of Alfa Romeo. Currently being run by the Sauber team, when Perez, as part of that team, managed to get second on the podium here at a time when he was being hotly touted for perhaps a Ferrari drive at the time. Took him a few more years, got a top seat in McLaren, didn't work out there, but then he fought his way back to a top seat in Red Bull, and he's welcomed with lots of chat about him and pressure and not being able to perform as well as Verstappen.
Yep, always the way. Always the way.
Better to stay at a Force India and outperform that, or go to a top team and have the pressure.
Take the top team, have the pressure, win the races. And that's what he's done. And whatever happens to Perez now, he's a Grand Prix winner. He actually did win one, didn't he, with Racing Point. But he's going to finish second in the championship, or he should finish second in the championship this year. These are career highlights to go on the resume at the end. That's something that you wouldn't achieve, being a plucky midfielder that can get some podiums on occasion. The drivers complained around the Budapest weekend and said, we were lucky that it was wet, because actually in the dry with this tyre allocation we wouldn't have had a lot of running. The same tyre allocation that is here in Monza, where there's a reduced tyre, there's fewer sets of tyres available. We have a hard tyre, then a medium tyre and a soft tyre for qualifying. Dry running, and everyone's rushing to get out there again. We had a red flag earlier on, everyone's rushing to get out. No problem at all.
No problem. And for those who are unaware, because we've had, I think, hashtag BBC F1 Tony getting in touch, asking how the alternative tyre allocation works when it comes to qualifying. Well, it is the same as Hungary. So all the drivers in Q1 will have to run the hards. In Q2, they will have to run the mediums. And in Q3, they will all have to run the soft compound of tyre, which I think is why we've seen pretty much everybody in both free practice sessions so far today running all sorts of tyres as they all file out of the pit lane and try and sort themselves out with a little bit of space on track and get some last bits of meaningful running with just 2 minutes and 35 seconds left on the clock.
So let's just finish off the Alfa Romeo Williams point before the end, whilst there's going to be one more lap on the board for everyone, but they're all on high fuel now. If you don't know if Bottas is doing well, if Bottas is underperforming,
Bottas.
He had a great first half of the first year, but you don't know if Zhou's doing great or Bottas is struggling. But I feel like Bottas might be... He's very relaxed at the moment. We know he's a fast driver, but if you chuck him in alongside a hungry, super quick F2 champion, might just be pushed a little bit more. He might not, and I might be doing a disservice to Zhou, but Alfa Romeo cannot know without trying it. And I don't know if Zhou's bringing a huge amount. I've been quite impressed with him, but I don't think he's irreplaceable in that car. And I want to see an F2 champ get a shot. And if Porsche wins Formula 2 and he's reserved at Alfa Romeo,
having had the link for so long with Alfa Romeo Sauber,
then what are you waiting for? You know, Zhou was knocking around in F2 for 3 years in F2,
and he was an Alpine driver, wasn't he? A Renault driver, and
he wound up third in the end. And he's done okay. He's done perfectly solidly in F1. He's compared admirably to a well-regarded teammate. But I want to see the champion get the shot, because maybe Pourchaire can do better in Formula One, and without giving him a shot, then you don't know. And the same for Drugovich, who is being touted as a potential replacement for Zhou or Sargent were Williams or Alfa Romeo to make the call. If you win the F2 Championship, you beat the likes of Sargent. Drugovich, he whipped him last year. Sargent was 4th. Drugovich ran away with the title. Yes, he'd been in Formula 2 for a little bit longer, but he learnt skills during that time as well. And there are plenty of young talent around as well. You see with Piastri, someone that can come in and just shows the skills in their rookie year. It is possible. Piastri's been a star. Yet to get a podium, but he has shown moments where you think, yeah, this guy could be the real deal. And I don't see that too often from Sargent, and Zhou's been decent. His 5th place qualifying in Hungary was superb.
With the alternative tyre allocation favouring them on that occasion.
And he was desperately unlucky then as well, because he had a car issue on the grid.
And he got the call right in, or the team at least got the call right in Zandvoort, and that rocketed him up into the top 3.
Zhou, that was Zhou. Zhou called it. Yeah. So did Bottas, but he wasn't allowed the pit stop. Yeah, so they both called it, and that's good stuff. So, there are things, and I don't want to be critical on Zhou, because I do think he's been solid, but I just feel like the team, they're struggling, they're missing performance generally, and I would like to see them just have a bit of fresh impetus rather than trudge on with the same driver lineup. But
with the Chinese Grand Prix scheduled to be back on the calendar next year for the first time in 3 years or so, that's a hugely decent sway to have Zhou if Alfa Romeo Sauber can capitalise on any commercialisation, because at the end of the day, sadly, it's not all due to being an F2 champion, having the pace. These other things come into effect. And
Zhou's not had a Chinese Grand Prix. He was a mainstay on the calendar until COVID, so he's not had a home race. So we're yet to really see the Zhou effect in China, and maybe if it stays on the calendar next year and Zhou stays in Formula One, we will see that, and we'll see the huge buzz for him in China, and Alfa Romeo can reap some reward from that. But I just don't think they've had that just yet from what we've seen.
Okay, well, FP2 done and dusted. That is the end of Friday's track action. One more practice session to go tomorrow before we get into qualifying, but it's Carlos Sainz for Ferrari who give the Tifosi something to smile about at the end of that session, finishing fastest with a 1:21.355 ahead of Lando Norris. Sergio Perez finding the gravel and a brief skirmish with the wall with just about 10 minutes or so remaining of FP2, but he ends up 3rd fastest in front of Piastri. Verstappen the top 5, Leclerc, Albon, Alonso, Russell, Hülkenberg the top 10, Magnussen, Bottas, Gasly, Tsunoda, Ocon the top 15, Sargent, Hamilton, Lawson, Zhou Guanyu, the 19 drivers who were able to set a lap in that session, with Lance Stroll's Aston Martin conking out on his outlap, and he was unable to get out again for the rest of that session.
Thank you very much, Harry. Yes, so birthday boy Carlos Sainz, top of the timesheets this afternoon. Do we take that as a sign that Ferrari really are the challengers this weekend, guys?
Well, Harry started the day saying how much pressure he was under, turning 29 today on his birthday, and maybe that's what he needs a birthday every weekend, Carlos Sainz. I think Ferrari, they've actually looked pretty good so far today. The race pace is a different kettle of fish, and I still think Red Bull look like they're going to be the team to beat Kel Surprise. But on qualifying pace, this is a nice order we've got. Sainz at the top, McLaren suddenly showing a turn of speed, and Verstappen down in 5th. Wow.
We could get a Ferrari fighting for that final podium spot. Maybe, just maybe.
You don't believe that Max Verstappen's going to wind up P5 in qualifying tomorrow, do you, Julian?
I'm sure he won't. But it is an unpredictable qualifying because of the tyre allocation. And you never know, on a hard or a medium tyre, the slipstreaming, there's going to be a factor. I'm sure of it tomorrow. It's going to be so important to have the right track position. If you don't have it and you miss a lap on a hard, medium tyre, then you just never know. The thing is, Rosanna, it doesn't even matter if he starts 5th, because he'll probably still win the race. He could start last and he might still win the race. But hey, it'll be interesting tomorrow.
Exactly, it certainly will. Of course, Sergio Perez finding the gravel, his session going up in a cloud of dust. Strong words needed from Christian Horner, or actually just leave him be and let him regroup for tomorrow's FP3 session?
I think no words needed. I think he's actually had a good day, Perez. He's been very close on pace to Verstappen. He's actually beaten him in this FP2 session, and he's done him on the long runs. Yes, he's been through the gravel. No words needed. Don't add the pressure. He's been pretty good. That's what you want.
So we've seen some standout performances then from Carlos Sainz, Lando Norris, right up there. Alex Albon also looking good in the Williams. That slippery car design. This is where it's meant to work, isn't it, Harry?
Yes, supposedly, but then they were great in Zandvoort as well, and that doesn't have very many long straights, but I think he set that lap on the medium compounded tyre as well, so the harder compounded tyre compared to the soft. So impressive from Williams and Albon yet again.
And a bit of head scratching going on at Mercedes, no doubt. George Russell coming home there, P9, and Lewis Hamilton, P17, not happy with the direction they went for FP2. I'm sure there'll be lots of work going on overnight here in Monza. Well, we meet again tomorrow for FP3. We'll be live at 11:25 and for qualifying at 5-3 across the BBC. My thanks to Jolyon Palmer, Andrew Benson and Harry Benjamin. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.